In a world where people strive to conquer the digital landscape, the best leaders are moving forward and planting flags. This is the Oil and Gas Digital Doers podcast, where you can hear about the thrill of digital victory and the industry's best guidance on how to win, with your host, Michael O'Sullivan.
So, for those of you who might be looking for a job, if you happen to be experienced as a pumper, now, and I think you have to be reasonably experienced, because this job here, this is from the Apache Corporation, and this is to be a pumper 3. So presumably you have to have already had experience being a pumper 1 and a pumper 2, and if you're up to the pumper 3 level, then they are hiring this job. Let's see, at an assortment of locations: Coahoma, Texas, which is out in the Permian. Also, let's see, Powell, Texas, which I think is up in East Texas near Corsicana. That would be the Haynesville Shale up there. Also in Eunice, New Mexico, which I feel like I should know where that is, but it's in New Mexico. As you know, there's lots of unconventionals happening out there. I don't know, there might be a couple of other spots. But anyway, if you're curious, like, well, what do I have to do if I'm a pumper 3? So the good news is, from what I can tell in the job description here, you don't have to do any actual pumping. Like, you don't have to grab the handle and, work the machine up and down. It looks like it's a little bit more... It's maybe more sophisticated, less physical than that. But anyway, there's a long list of bullets here. It looks like you have to know how to do a lot of stuff. But if like, for example, there's a lot of preparing various reports and checking measurements and keeping good records and maintaining the safety of the equipment. And it's a pretty responsible position, pumper 3, from what I can tell. So anyway, if you want to work in Texas or New Mexico, and I would guess you got to at least be a pumper 2. Let's see, what are the minimum requirements here? Well, you got to have a high school. You got to have graduated high school. It says 5 years of related work experience. That sounds to me like you've already been a pumper 1 and a pumper 2, and you got to know all the Microsoft applications. And there's a bunch of other stuff here. But anyway, just wanted to share that with you. Why on earth I know you're wondering why on the Oil and Gas Digital Doers podcast, which, by the way, welcome to the Oil and Gas Digital Doers podcast, brought to you right here on the Oil and Gas Global Network by our very good friends at Hewlett Packard Enterprise, affectionately known as HPE. So the reason why, well, you're going to find out when we get to the guest. This is a really fun guest today, folks. I know I say that every guest is great, and they are, but this time I'm talking with now. If you had listened to a couple of episodes back, I was talking with a couple of guys from ExxonMobil, and we were talking about their innovation framework, and they mentioned this person numerous times. And so today we will be talking with that person who everybody was so impressed by, and you're going to find out why I was kind of curious to know what exactly does a pumper do, and how do I get a pumper job. Clearly, I'm not qualified, so I will not be applying for the pumper 3 job with Apache. But if you are, you can find this right there on the Apache website, or I imagine any of the other spots. All right. Enough of that. I did mention our sponsor, Hewlett Packard Enterprise, HPE. They are a relatively new sponsor for the show, but they're not new to working with OGGN. They have sponsored some other stuff for us. We've worked on some events together. Really love the folks over there, and they're doing some great stuff. You might have heard me on the last episode talk about HPE Green Lake. It is a cool thing. If you're looking for better options on how to do this edge to cloud stuff, then look at HPE Green Lake. If you don't know what I mean by edge to cloud, then that's probably not for you. But we do love working with them. We appreciate their sponsorship. As I always say, without them, there is no us, and that is really true. Without our sponsors, we wouldn't be able to do any of this, and therefore you would have nowhere to go for all of this fantastic stuff. Believe me, I've looked. There is nowhere. This is the only place. So thanks to our sponsors. Please show them some love. And without any further babbling from me, ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm OGG and welcome to Maggie Burns. All right, folks, that gets us, as you probably just heard me say right before the exciting musical interlude, that we have our guest today. I am sitting here on the line with Maggie Burns from this little company known as XTO Energy. So, Maggie, thanks for making time today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, I mean, anytime. Actually, so we were just talking about this, right? The story is that for those of you faithful listeners, and I guess even the unfaithful ones, if you heard this episode that I did a little while back on a show with these two guys, Rich and Ben.
Look, you got it.
I got it. Not Rich and Ken from ExxonMobil. And remember, so Rich and Ben from ExxonMobil were talking about all this cool digital transformation, the innovation framework and stuff. And if you remember in that show, they kept talking about this amazing person, Maggie, who has done some great digital transformation out in the unconventional. So here we have, so we have the great and wonderful Maggie actually on the show. It's great to, I mean, because they made you sound like a mythical being when they were talking.
I think I like pay Ben or something apparently.
Is that what it was? Okay.
I definitely, yeah. So, I definitely owe him some money, I think.
Yes. Okay, we'll just keep that between us. So, so first, Maggie, so let's talk about who you are. So you do work for this company, XTO, which we might talk about that in a second, because I think maybe not everybody is necessarily familiar with the relationship between XTO and ExxonMobil. But the more important thing is that you're out there in the unconventional world, where of course they love for people to come in like with new ideas on what they want to do, what you want to do with their computers. But I know I did a little homework. I know you were with XTO for a long time, even before the merger, something like 13, 14 years. And you started out like you were out in, like you're running the equipment, right? Like you were a field person.
Yeah, that's right. I started out as a pumper.
As a pumper.
I guess technical
only
term now is police operator.
Yeah. only in this industry do you have something called a pumper. So
exactly.
So all right. So we got time. Let's talk about what does that mean exactly if you're a pumper?
Yeah, so those are kind of the boots on the ground that actually optimize and run wells and bring them on when we have new wells and kind of keep production moving, right? And so I started my first 3 years of my career.
So you're not out there like with the handle, like moving the thing up and down to get the, like you say pumper and I think of like when I was a kid, we used to go camping at this place where they didn't really have running water, but there was this pump and you'd like crank the handle up and down and the water would come out. Like that, we're not talking about.
Yeah, not really that, right? Okay. I did do gas wells starting out, and so I started in Barnett Shale, but really like optimizing artificial lift, and I think pumper really came to terms because you think of the rod pumps, right? So trying to optimize and run rod pumps, and for me, artificial lift and gas lift, and just bringing wells on and turning crescent wrenches and pipe wrenches and slinging hammers, right? So definitely started out in the field, in the truck all day working on wells, and then kind of went through the artificial lift route.
So I'm a little curious, like, was this like you always wanted to do this? Like when you were a kid, you hung out in the garage looking at all the tools and saying, someday I'm going to get me a big crescent wrench. Like how was it?
I think it's the same as probably everybody. You kind of fall into it backwards. I am definitely the tomboy. So my dad was lucky enough to have 2 girls. And so I was the boy of the group for sure.
Yeah.
And definitely like a farming family. And I actually have an ag degree that I'm not using. And so it was one of those, you knew somebody who knew somebody that needed work. And my sister's going to rub this in all day long. But one of her friends' dad actually needed somebody to help. And so she introduced me, and the rest has been history. I've been with XTO for 13 years, like you said.
Okay. So all this time with XTO, apparently you were having a lot of fun. And then one day somebody came and said, we're merging with this little company you might have heard of called ExxonMobil, right? So that's been what, like 5-6 years now? How long has that been?
Oh, longer. Yeah, 10.
Longer.
Yeah, it was in 2010, I think, when they announced it. So, 10, 11 years now.
So if my wife were here, she would say, it doesn't matter. Like if I say that was 2 years ago, she'll hold up 5 fingers, right? Like if I say, that was
if
about 5 years
I say
ago.
that happened the other day, it really happened probably a year ago.
Yeah,
so I agree. I'm going to the same way.
so more than 10 years ago. So ExxonMobil, because they were interested in the unconventional business, right? That's when it was really
Yep.
starting to boom. Yeah.
Yeah, that's correct.
So good. But it's still XTO Energy. Like, is it
It is.
is it still kind of like its own separate operation, or how does it
Yeah,
start?
I mean, it's definitely becoming more ingrained now and really trying to merge kind of the two thinking. And, XTO was much more of a kind of independent, fast, agile, kind of move quickly,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
less processes. And so there's probably pros and cons to both of them. And so it really is kind of moving down the path of integrating and trying to get the best of both worlds.
Yeah. It's kind of like this other little company that they bought a while back called Mobile.
Called
And
mobile, right?
yeah. Yeah, same thing. Well, and so I'm kind of hanging on this because besides just being an interesting story, when we start talking about digital transformation, one of the big things to kind of work through is the cultural aspects, right? And if you already have a culturally complex organization, then digital transformation doesn't get any easier, I would imagine, right?
No, that's true. And I'll say, at least in unconventional, everybody always kind of asks me, how did you get the buy-in? And even if it was hard at first, and maybe I'm far enough away from that 2 years ago that it doesn't seem that hard
Hmm.
anymore. But there's so much drive from unconventional, and I think it has been because we've always been the speed up. You think about Exxon and some of the super majors in their core portfolios, and it's like long projects, long-term thinking, build something for 4 or 5 years and it's going to be around for 20 or 30 years. And that's
Yeah,
not really how
yeah,
unconventional works,
not
right?
at all.
And
No.
so I do think it's like a shift change in what
Hmm.
we're used to, even how we produce.
Yeah,
And so
yeah.
we kind of tackle some of the stuff differently.
Yeah, I remember it was probably about 3 or 4 years ago. People were just beginning to talk about some of the stuff, and I was working with this small sort of software consulting company, and we were talking to this somebody from not XTO, but let's just say a similar company, not as big, smaller, but similar business, and I remember saying, well, we could do this, that, and the other related to using I don't remember what it is actually, but something digital transformation oriented, even though I don't know if we were using that term quite yet. But and this guy looks at me and he goes, "Yeah, that sounds like a science project." And and I knew that the sale was pretty much dead right there, like we weren't going to
Yep.
sell anything. So let's talk about that, because I know that I can tell just by looking at the little progression of things, of positions on your LinkedIn, that what happened one day, you were busy, happy, pumping and turning wrenches or whatever it was you were doing, or probably managing other people doing that by now. And one day somebody walked in and said, surprise, you're now in charge of digital transformation for all these people out here that want nothing to do with it. So what what did you do? So first of all, how were you so lucky enough to be, there must have been something. They saw something in your eyes that said she's going to be good at this. And what did you do?
Yeah, so I mean, practically, that's exactly what happened. But
Yeah.
you're right. Like, I was artificial lift foreman at that point, right? And where I was working again, I was in a BU, and so we were
Hmm.
really working in Fort Worth for some of that efficiency, right? Kind of
Yeah.
looking towards an older field. How do we make it more profitable and really optimized? And so, in
Sure.
doing that, it was really kind of doing that job, and then we were bringing on all these initiatives of like, oh, pump by exception, operate by priority, whatever we're going to call it now. How do we really bring in where guys are going to valuable stuff, and that we're not focusing on the non-profitable stuff. And um as we started doing that, it was really just kind of split efforts, and we finally kind of sat down and talked and said, okay, I'm doing two jobs probably pretty badly at this point. Like, I need to
Right.
pick one and something, and really decided to go down this path. And we actually created a role called the Operations Technology Coordinator, which is what I was doing directly before this one, and
Okay, I
really
got to stop you.
embedded that.
That sounds like
Yeah, go ahead.
That sounds like ExxonMobil right there.
You're probably not wrong. I think my ops manager
Operations
had a
technology
list of.
coordinator. Yes.
Yeah, they had a list of names that he could pick through, and he kind of picked, said, "That makes sense to me." Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Um,
So there you go. So then what happened?
so and then yeah, so for sure started proving out the use case that we could drive a lot of this digital and efficiency by having a voice from the field and who supports the field, because we have a ton of great ideas that are really grassroots, right? So
Right.
many times these lease operators, mechanics, maintenance guys, measurement guys, they have great ideas on how to make their job more efficient, but they
Right.
really didn't have a pipeline of where it went, right? They might send it to a foreman, the foreman might be interested, but
Yeah,
oh, the
sure.
safety thing came up or this thing came up.
So
And
let's
so,
pause there for just a second, because
yeah.
so give me an example, because that sentence you just said, like, we had some ideas that would make our job more efficient, blah blah blah. People say those things a lot of times in the abstract, and I understand it's because we're trying to kind of generalize so we can keep the conversation moving. But like, give me an example. Like, what is one of those things that somebody
Our
comes up with an
biggest
idea?
thing, and it's so silly. It's silly when you're on the outside looking in, because for any other industry, it's probably crazy. But it was using our phones. How many times are guys out in the field with, like, they're on a hotspot on their phone trying to get on the laptop to do things? And
Right.
in our daily world, at any point, I had one guy tell me, I can see what my wife is spending 2 seconds after she spent it because I get an alert from my bank account, but I couldn't do anything on my phone in the company. And now in
Nice.
Uncon, at least, like, we've embedded phones with everything, right? It's like their crescent wrench. They better have it in their back pocket.
Yeah.
And that's what they do. They get their data there. They input their data there. We fill out compliance forms. Like, everything's mobile now, or a ton of it, right? We took paper
Yeah.
away. Laptops, they still use it, but it's really, if you can do it on Facebook, why can you not do it for
Why
Wells?
can't you do it from? Yeah. What you're talking about is digital transformation being brought to the worker, the workers themselves, and how
Hmm.
they work, right? Do you have any
Yep.
examples of and there's lots of that going around, which is really good. Um, do you have you done anything with regard to bringing some sort of digital transformation, like actually to the drilling and completions and production operations themselves, where like now maybe like your service companies or your vendors or whatever have got like new capabilities that are making things work better? Or is it really just about enabling the people to run the operation better?
So, my major role, at least, is really hands on with operations in our internal teams a lot of the time.
Right.
But I'll say that we try to spread that, right? And so we're not so siloed that just because it's our main focus, we don't try to move further out. And so we're doing a lot of things. At least we have a couple of digital teams in unconventional. Drilling and completions is one of those focus. We use a third party company, and there's some really cool things that we use. And, like, Corva, for example, and we're
Oh,
not opposed to third party too,
we
right?
love
I
those
think you have
guys.
to
We love Corva. They
I
they
think you have to think, like, what's internal versus external off the shelf available, right?
Yeah, yeah. No, we love, so Ryan and those guys, we love them. In fact, if you're in Houston, right? Aren't you in Houston?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Mhm.
so you need to come, and everybody else who's listening who's in Houston, you need to come to the OGGN monthly happy hour events. Now we've started those back up. Those were kind of this legendary thing that we used to do, and then of course we quit. When everybody was not doing that stuff. Um, but we have them at the Cannon in West Houston, and which is also where we record a lot of podcasts. But we've started having them in Ryan in the Corva offices. I don't know if you've ever been there, but they
Oh,
have
I haven't. Uh-uh.
they have this amazing space at the Cannon, this big open kind of event space, and it's really cool. But yeah, they they're doing some stuff that is. Like when it comes to like closing the loop with data, like being able to analyze and process data like in real time in the drilling operation, and like send it right back into the operation to adjust the instructions that ordinarily you'd would have had to go back to like the guy who made the model. Like that's really cool stuff that they're doing.
Yeah.
I mean, is that what you're seeing happen out there in
And
the
and
real
I
world?
think they're doing a lot of that stuff, and we have a really awesome, we're just going to keep giving you more people to talk to, but we have a really awesome drilling manager named Jason Garr, and he's got like a drilling control room set up on our campus where it's really screens up with drilling engineers working and looking at Corva and then looking at real-time information coming back in rig so we can make those changes and really kind of focus on our performance. And
Okay.
so,
All right, I gotta pause you for a second, because remember that thing that before we turned on record that like I said it sounds like you're
oh
on
no.
Jupiter. Oh wait, now you're back. You're back. So you must have turned your
Okay.
head. That's okay. But anyway, we're gonna get that drilling guy on the show to talk about, because because don't move your head or anything.
Okay, I won't. I'm going to stay
So now you can tell
100%
the
still.
truth is that part of your digital transformation for workers is you've actually installed antennas in your head, right?
That's it.
But you're
That's
still
it.
kind
They
of
follow me around.
fine tuning. So, all right. So, so let's go back to the story. So one of the things, and I think back to one of the things that Ben told me was that when he was an operations guy in the field, and these two like young guys had this idea for some, I don't even remember what it was, some sort of fancy computer stuff. And he said, and I like promptly threw them out of my office. And so how did you and when I said, yeah, how do you overcome that? That was when they started talking about Maggie being like the master at that. So if I'm somebody listening to this and I'm like, yeah, I just got crowned this position as well, and nobody wants anything to do with it. What do you do? How do you approach that group of people and help bring them the question, how do you get buy-in, right? But that's like a simple way of like the reality is you got to go out there and start talking to people. Like, how did you do it?
That's exactly it. Like, I think some people come with a technology and say, give me a problem so this technology fits it. What we do is say, give me your problem and let me see if I can find a technology for you.
Yeah.
So I'm not there to pitch technologies and sales jobs, and I'm there to
Right.
help their business process and their workflow. And if they can help me with that, or I can go, and I don't expect us to sit in workshop and spend 4 days in a room where they document everything. My
Oh,
expectation
they
for
love that.
myself,
That's their favorite
they
thing
love
to
it.
do.
My expectation for myself and for the network of people I work with, so there's a whole team of OTCs now that report directly to superintendents in each BU, is that we are in the truck riding with the guys and looking for opportunities. Like, they shouldn't have to come to me for every little thing, but if we sit there and ride with them and understand and recognize when things are happening, then we can find some of those and like, oh, why are you having to do that? Tell me more about that. Who's asking you for that? And then we get to go do the investigation. And
Yeah.
I swear, the first time that you actually get results for them where you've made their job a little bit easier and they can focus on what is a priority in their world, they'll bring stuff to you.
Yeah.
Like, the
I bet.
buy-in is proving that you're there for them.
Right. So the first time you go and say, give me one of your problems, they're like, "No, okay, I'll play along. Right.
Yeah.
And then when you solve it and make it better, all of a sudden, like, you got a
They're
contract.
like, oh, here's 20 more problems. I always laugh. My first conversation was we were rolling out a technology, and it was a third-party technology. And the easy part's to roll out, right? That's the easy part. But the follow-up is where it really like proves out, because nothing's perfect, especially if you're going to try new things. So I went in and I said, okay, you can tell me it's not good. You can tell me I'm not good. I don't care. I've got thick skin, and just talk to me. And like an hour later, I had them telling me they wanted FR rain gear because they're like, oh, look, she's getting stuff done. Right. I'm like, okay, I can't necessarily get you FR rain gear, but
Right.
like,
And also we need
their
a new
foreman's sitting
microwave
there.
in the
Yeah.
trailer. Yeah.
And their foreman's sitting there and he's like, I'll handle that one. I'm like, okay, thanks. Do that. But you just become a point person, right? And it's not because I can necessarily fix everything, but maybe I'm the pipeline so they don't have to call Houston, or they catch me. Like most of the operators in the field, it's not that they can't work emails or their phones, but it's so much easier to catch somebody. So they always caught me way more times running to the bathroom or the safety meeting than they ever reached out and like actually called me for something, right? So you just
Sure.
have to be available. You have to be part of their network and part of their world.
Yeah, no, right. And so this is I think there's a couple of things that are really key here to being successful. One is you have the credibility because you're from that world, right?
Hmm.
So that I think that, like, if you're looking at like what's the prescription for success, that one's probably critical. Um, and uh, and then, as you said, actually being there, right? You're not like this person at the other end of an email trail somewhere, who I need to remember to get back to, right? You're somebody that I can like run into on the way to the bathroom and
Yep.
and talk about stuff. So let's but now let's talk about what happens on the other side, because you mentioned all of a sudden now they give you 20 problems, which means, because on the other side of all this, you have to like actually make these like come up with solutions that work, which means you have to prioritize what's most important. And you also have to probably wrangle various groups of people, right? To actually, like, you don't have a magic wand where you just go like, poof, here, your problem is now better. So what happens on the other side?
Well, I want that magic wand.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, that's the thing, right? So part of it is prioritization. When I look at it and when I have to prioritize across everything, because I have, three major BUs with divisions kind of within them. And so
Right.
everybody needs something. It's not always the same thing. So
Yeah.
if we are looking for something, long term, we want to try something, see if it works. So do small pilots. So really, discover that, kind of figure out what's the right fit for it, and then scale it if possible. And so when you really get to that scalability, that's when you're like, okay, I can put more resources behind it because it may fit 1,000 lease operators versus these 20. And
Right.
so I really have to start in my role now with 10 OTCs kind of that I work with. I have to start looking at saying what's the biggest impact to the business and who's also hurting the worst, right? Do we have some decent workarounds here that we can make this work and we can buy a little bit of time, or something completely broken and we need to figure this out and have a full end-to-end solution? And so a lot of times it's a very iterative process. Like, we can't always do the slam dunk, we're going to get everything done right now. But I also think if you communicate that with the guys, they are very open to knowing that it's not going to happen in the next 2 weeks, that it's going to be a process to get there if you can deliver on the things that can happen in the next 2 weeks.
Right. Right. Right.
And I mean, our IT teams, at least, the Uncon IT teams are our partnership, and I couldn't do it without them. So I always just say I translate the field very well, but like, I know just enough technical to probably be painful and be a problem. And so they really helped me, like, taking my translation and
Yeah.
doing something with it and trying to build that priority as well, right?
Do you have people
But
that
we
are
also don't do. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
no, no. Well, I'm just curious. Do you have people who are dedicated to you for these efforts, or do you have to kind of like compete for resources like in the pile of people?
We definitely compete.
Yeah.
But I'll say most of the stuff now, and I've been really lucky with at least the avenues that we kind of reach out to,
Right.
were probably some of the biggest priorities because I know it's coming straight from the business. And so it's like the customer wants it, we're going to give it to the customer. And that's really how
Gotcha.
XTO ITs works. If
Yeah.
it's really business driven and it's bringing value, I heard one of the old managers say at one point to his team, it's not about how many laptops you replace, it's how many dollars you brought to the bottom line for that profit for that company,
Yeah.
and so when we're all
So how do
pulling
you
the wagon in the same direction, that's
Right. So
important.
that gets to actually my next thing, which is something that is often elusive for this kind of stuff is how do you measure the impact of these things in like real dollars to the bottom line for the company or whatever the measurement is? How do you like it's easy for you anecdotally to look out and see that people's lives have improved, but like at some point you gotta like somebody somewhere wants to know how did that move the needle in our business? So how do you measure it?
Yeah, and I mean, some things are way easier than others, right? Some things have very tangible. They've improved our safety program. They've increased volumes. They've dropped OpEx. There's things that are very tangible that you can say from the forefront that this is what value we're going to start tracking,
Hmm.
and look at like what our baseline was when we started and see what it is at the end. Maybe one of my team members is doing artificial lift stuff, and we increase production by like 2% or something. Throwing out some numbers. But
Yeah.
then there's other soft value things that it's a whole lot harder, and that's the anecdotal stuff, right? But if I save a guy out in the field an hour a day and exponentially look at that over how many days they work, that's value too, right? And then one cool thing that we found is that we have that kind of peripheral value where we're chasing this one thing, but because we freed up their time, we've actually seen some hard value come up because they had dedicated time to
Right.
do other things that brought value.
Right. Right. So does
And
anybody ever ask you like, well, how do you know that it was what you did, that thing you did that gave us that 2%? Maybe we just got better this month.
oh yeah, and I think that's something we always tackle, right? Or when you have so many initiatives, how do you say
Right.
that
Right.
this initiative was the one that did it? And I think that's something we're all going to struggle with for a really, really long time until we figure it out. Now, I'm a big believer as well that half the time the value comes in the philosophy change, right? It comes
Sure.
in not just the technology, but hey, we're looking at stuff different and we're trying to be more efficient and drive towards more quality. But at that point, then what we're doing is still a facilitator of that, right? So
Yeah.
whether it's on the technology or the process, we're still changing the mindset to a transformational kind of process, which I think is pretty powerful. Because technology is going to grow, it's going to change and adjust, and we
Right.
just need to do that. And we need the guys to be versatile enough to do it with us.
Yeah. I'm sold. You convinced me. I'm ready to fund your project, whatever it is. Whatever it is, you can have whatever money you want. That's
They
um
always trust me because I tell them we're not going to do digital for the sake of digital.
yeah.
That's the science project, right? We're doing it
So
because it should do something with our safety, our cost, our people, or our volumes. Like
so
we
it's really
gotta
funny. Yeah,
fit
go
that
ahead,
root
sorry.
cause.
Yeah.
No, it's okay. We gotta help pull the wagon.
Yeah. So you said the digital for the sake of digital. Um so the very first time I ever heard somebody, now it was technology for technology's sake. Um this is back when we didn't say digital, right? Um,
Hmm.
so this is probably like going to be before your time, but I heard people say you shouldn't do technology for technology's sake. I heard that in the 1990s, and it was like very profound, right? It was like very profound, like yeah, that's right. Oh, they're just doing technology for technology's sake. Oh, well, we don't want to do that. We're not that stupid, right? And we keep doing it over,
But we
like,
keep
and
doing it.
25 years later, like we're still doing.
We're still saying it and still having to fight it,
Yeah,
right?
and we're still saying it like it's like this new wisdom that we'd never thought of
Yep.
before. So, so, but it's kind of human nature, right? Like when these
Mhm.
new capabilities come along, um, you feel like we should be using that. We should be doing something with that. So and so is doing it. How come we're not doing it? We could be, like it's just natural, I think, to be enthusiastic about these things and to want to get whatever presumed benefit there is. So you have kind of two different groups of people, right? You have the people who maybe are more like some of the people that you have had to deal with, who are like, just like keep all that stuff away from me. But then you have the people who are like, this is great, we should be using this, and then they make the mistake of, okay, but what are you actually going to do with it? What do you expect to get out of it? And how do you? So it sounds to me like you've got that formula down pretty well at this point, right? And the key is you're actually out there in the field observing, right, and working those relationships.
Yeah, and I think we're also and there's I think there's a difference as well from being a hurdle from doing technology and being a filter, because every time every startup company comes and has a new great idea or a new shiny dashboard that they throw it as being AI or machine learning, and it's like, no, you just gave us a fancy dashboard. We have to help filter that, right? Because it's really easy to get sucked in and then be overwhelmed with initiatives or trials or pilots where we're not doing our base business. And so part of it is just looking and kind of scoping that out to see if it's a viable solution, and then target like a pilot area that's got some open time to do it or willingness to do it that would fit their business, so we could prove out the results. I mean, you think about stuff and it's becoming more and more prevalent and things are coming, but we couldn't have done drones 4 or 5 years ago like we could possibly do them in 5 years from here, right?
Right, sure.
Or the smart goggles or things like that, like stuff that was really cool, and yeah, we should be able to do something with it, but it just wasn't there, especially in not a refinery or not a platform or places that don't have Wi-Fi, or we're in the middle of Carlsbad, New Mexico, or the desert outside of Carlsbad, New Mexico, with cruddy cell service on the side of a canyon.
Right,
You got to think about the fit for purpose. Like, oh, it's
sure.
great if I'm in Houston with 5G, but what does it
Right.
look like out there for us?
It's coming soon. 5G. It'll be out there on the edge of the canyon soon. But so another thing, that an interesting part of kind of what you're describing is you're right. There are these new innovations that are coming fast and furious now, and you're gonna be much because the 5G will eventually show up everywhere. In fact, we're having that's going to be our panel discussion at the next OGG and Happy Hour on the 20th this month. No, what is it? The 30th, on the 30th of this month, which is being sponsored by RealWear. And if you looked at some of the stuff that those guys at RealWear and some of the like connected worker stuff, the innovations are amazing. You're going to be in a lot better position to adopt whatever new stuff does come along now that you kind of have this like framework and this rhythm for how to get this stuff done, right? Like you've got like you got the machine running now, right? And it's like all greased up, and you know now how to identify opportunities for a solution, find the solution, and bring that solution to bear. So all you got to do is just keep running that machine as these new innovations come along. Am I making that sound too shiny, or is
Yeah.
it kind of?
No, I mean,
that's the
that's
idea, right?
100% right.
Yeah.
Well, and honestly, the idea is like it's a machine that manages itself at some point. So if I really do my job well, my job doesn't exist in a little bit, and it's just embedded in our business that they do digital, right? That it's just part of their daily life, and they are the machine that goes through these things, right?
So what are you going to do
That
once they don't need you anymore?
I'll find something else. I promise. That's a
Really?
success for me.
So this is for all our listeners. Just keep in mind that this amazing person, Maggie Burns, will probably be available for you sometime.
I mean,
in
I
the
think I'll
next
be probably
18
somewhere else in
months.
Exxon, hopefully. Hopefully they don't fire me
All this
because
can
of
be
it.
yours
But
for the low price of. Yeah,
this
no,
is like a scene on TV.
is that but is it really, but I mean, but you're serious though, they're actually getting to
Yeah.
where like this is just part of how the business runs.
Yeah, I mean, especially with my and I can't talk about them enough, but those OTCs, and we like our acronyms, but them
Yeah.
being embedded in the field, they're all doing it themselves, right?
Oh
Like
yeah, what was
I
that? What,
help give like
operational
a
technology coordinator? Is that what it was?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And so they're doing it themselves. We have regular meetings and cadences where we kind of talk to each other and see if it fits global vision. And if there's something new that they don't know about, they come to me and we vet it together and go through our teams. But man, it's at this point I feel like it's a well-oiled machine that they kind of take care of stuff for us, and they're delivering right there, and they're reporting to the local BU management. So usually a production superintendent or operations superintendent, and they're just part of the team, and they are the digital lead for out there.
That's fantastic. You make it sound so easy. I don't know why we're having all this trouble everywhere.
Find those trailblazers.
Yeah, no. Well, then that's the thing, and that's exactly what the show is about. We say that this is about stories about people who are getting digital done. It certainly sounds like you are getting digital done. We mentioned, I can't remember if this was before we turned on the microphones, but we were talking about how sometimes we catch in the industry, the outside observing think tanks like to say, well, you're not making very much progress in digital transformation, but we've come a tremendous, given the size and complexity of the industry, what you're describing right here, it sounds like progress to me. It feels like it anyway, right?
I think it's a ton of progress in a very short period of time. I mean, we went from an industry that was probably static in what we were doing. And I think here's the other thing. People say that oil and gas isn't innovative. If you look from a scientific drilling, fracking, completion, it's very innovative, right?
Yes.
It was just the focus was on something different. And so now we really split the focus into something that we found brought just as much value as that stuff does, right? And I think everybody talks about it in terms of like, oh, well, yeah, we have Facebook, we have Instagram, we have Amazon, but nobody looks at the 20 years they were in a garage, right?
In a 12-inch space for a mile and a half. Yeah.
Yeah, and bend pipe through 90-degree angle, right? Like we can do really cool things.
Yeah.
And we prove we can by putting
you're back in space again.
Oh, okay.
I guess that means we're gonna
have to move my head.
I can't wait till you hear this. Oh wait, I think it's fixed again.
Oh, did that fix it?
No. But I will say this. So you have just hit on my other soapbox, which is really part of the other show, Oil and Gas Tech, and which is that yes, we've been innovating in this industry for over 100 years, and we were tech before tech was cool. So we're gonna have to. So I might have to get you to go on to that show, and if that's something that you're passionate about, we can talk about that for a half hour easily. But this is probably a good place to wrap up for today. It's really they told me you were gonna have a good story, and they weren't lying. It's a really good one. So thank you for making time to share it with everybody.
Well, thank you. I'm sorry my audio's iffy.
Oh, it's better now, so we're good.
Yay.
So
okay.
let's wrap up before.
Let's finish up on the high mark.
Exactly. All right. Well, Maggie Burns, XTO Energy, thank you very much, and we really appreciate you sharing all your wisdom and insight.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, there you go, folks. The famous Maggie Burns from XTO Energy and/or ExxonMobil. And I guess, she is famous in some circles, certainly the ones where she's having a lot of impact. We do love having these stories from people who are actually out there on the front lines operationally trying to get digital done, which is, of course, what the Oil and Gas Digital Doers podcast is all about. So thanks to her for making time and being on the show. Maybe we'll check back in with her a little later and see later in the year and see how she's doing. Also, I need to tell you about a few things, actually. As always, there is so much going on with OGGN that I'm probably going to leave some stuff out, but some of the highlights are, first of all, you've probably heard me mention this new show that we just launched recently that is kind of exploring strategies for new energy, because, of course, we are embracing that. I mean, make no mistake, here at Oil and Gas Global Network, we are we are oil and gas advocates. We love the industry. We're very, as you know, we create a great community. But we got to look at what's going on in the world and some of this other energy stuff. So we launched a new podcast, and hosted by Joe Batir. In fact, I had him as a guest on my other show, the Oil and Gas Tech Show. Which, if you like this one, you got to listen to the Tech Show because they kind of go together. Anyway, that you might have heard me talk about that show being called Low Carbon Solutions, and there was a little bump in the road, and presto, there's a new title, and it is Energy Transition Solutions. Suffice to say that between our team and our sponsors team, AWS Energy, which is very kindly sponsoring that show, we decided that would be a better title. So if you subscribed to Low Carbon Solutions and you're looking and you're saying, where the heck is it? It should still, your subscription should still be there. The artwork looks almost the same. The title is different. The title of the show is different. And it's still Joe. It's still the same great show. It's off to a great start. So check that one out if you have not already. Energy Transition Solutions. Also, oil and gas. I say the word oil and gas so many times, I trip over it sometimes. OGGN has a whole bunch of I think we're up to 14 podcasts. So if you like this one, if you've heard some others, go to oggn.com. You can very quickly and easily there see all the podcasts that we offer, all the great hosts, all the great content. You can subscribe. You find out about the podcast there on the website, and then you go to your Apple or your Spotify or whatever it is that you do, and you can find them and subscribe and listen and all that. So please do that. Also, let's see what else. Oh, if you are in Houston, or if you want to be in Houston, not only have we started up the OGGN Happy Hour events, which you've heard me say, which are once a month on the last Thursday of every month. We all show up at the Cannon. We have food. We got drinks. We hang out. We always have a very good panel discussion. But there's been so much demand for these that during the month of September and October, we're actually doing 2 each month. And so I think you are going to hear this episode probably in time, maybe in time to, depending on when you listen to it, you might hear it in time to go to the one on September 23rd. That one may not actually be at the Canada. So check our LinkedIn, check our Eventbrite. We may be exploring a new venue there, but all the information will be there. And then we're going to do another one on the 30th, and then we're going to do another one on October 14th, and then we're going to do another one at the end of October, whatever that day is. So there's a bunch of them, and if you can't make all of them, then you can at least make one of them. Maybe you can make 2 of them. Of course, it does require you to be in Houston, but if you are during those times, then come to the OGGN Happy Hours. That's it. That's going to wrap it up for today, folks. As always, Thanks to our audio fixer guy, Mr. Mac Roman, who always puts all of this stuff together and makes us sound great. He throws a little bit of his own personality in there once in a while, as you might notice, but we love that. And thanks again to our sponsor, HPE, for making it possible. Thanks, everybody, for listening, and come back for the next one where we can hear some more stories about people who are actually getting digital done.
Come back next week for yet another exhilarating expedition into the very real world of the best digital doers in the oil and gas industry. A production of the Oil and Gas Global Network. Learn more at oilandgasdigitaldoerscomp1172.com.